Okay, so I've got some text working, and now I want to draw some dimensions that follow the same basic principle, being set up to work at different scales. And so really importantly, remember the scale option down the bottom right is going to affect everything we're doing, and that's actually a good thing. It makes it easier for us to do our work. And again, remember the annotation panel on the Home tab will give you the settings to make your different styles. So the text style we've done, and then the button under it does dimension styles. So here you will see it will give you an annotated dimension style to start off with. So you can choose that, but then notice it looks really ugly because it's set up with those awful arrows and everything. We're going to fix that. So select it, don't worry how it looks, just click modify, oh sorry, not modify, sorry, new, which does the same thing almost. Click the new button though, and it gives you a chance to put in a new name. Call it what you like. Dim is fine. You only need one dimension style if you're going to follow this method. And if you can get other people who don't know this way using the annotative option, they'll tell you you've got to make 5 different dimension styles for all your scales. But follow this method, you don't have to do that. One dimension style will do everything, as long as you have that annotative option ticked. Really important. So hit continue, and then I'm going to go through all the settings, but if you understand them, you don't really have to memorise them all, and it should be fairly easy. So firstly, don't worry about tolerances or alternate units. That's for engineers pretty much. So I'm going to start with primary units, and then leave it on decimal, and then just set the precision to 0. I don't need any decimal places if you're working in millimetres. The decimal separator, I'm going to change to a period. We don't want a comma, we're not European. So period between the decimals, even though I've got no precision there, so we're not going to see decimal places for measurements, but we will see them for angles. So I'm going to change that to, or leave it on decimal degrees, but change the precision to just 1 decimal place. You'll see why that's important later. So that's a pretty good basic setup. Some people might round off as well, but I'll leave that at 0 for now. So that's it for units. Then going to fit quickly, I'm just going to check the annotative is ticked. You get a chance, if you haven't already done that, to check it. And everything else there I'm going to leave on defaults. Going to the text tab, I always like to make a text style just for dimensions. So a couple of little tips there. Firstly, click Browse to get to your text styles, and then of course New to make a new one, which I'll call Dim as well for my dimensions. Then the secret here is not to use annotative and not to put in a height. Leave those both turned off. So don't tick annotative, and definitely don't put a height in. It'll mess it up. You'll see in a minute why. So 0 height, and then you can close it. You don't have to set it. In your dimension styles, choose that new text style, and notice it gives you a chance to put the height in here. Right, so if you put the height in the other one, it uses that instead. So there, I'm going to make it 2 mil, and that's it for this tab. So my text is done. Now I'll go to slope, symbols and arrows, and just choose one of the ticks. It's up to you if you want to use architectural tick or oblique. Oblique is just a thinner one, a thinner tick. Architectural tick's a bit heavier. That's it for this tab. If you want to, you can change the leaders actually. I don't really like the closed one, so I might go for right angle, but the arrow's up to you. As long as you don't use a tick here for arrows or leaders. Leaders just means arrow usually. So that's my symbols and arrows done. Just think of it as a line with an arrow. That's usually going to have text on the end of it. So for notes. So then, if we go to the Lines tab, let's point out one thing here. Sometimes you'll see that some of these settings are greyed out. So if you notice that extend beyond ticks can't be changed, it's because you haven't got a tick set. So it's got to be an architectural tick or an oblique, or something like that, to get that any option that uses ticks. So extend beyond ticks, I'm going to make that 2, really just so you can see what it does. Notice how it's added this little extension beyond my tick. 2 is maybe a bit much, so I'm going to make it a little bit less. 1.5 maybe, but this is a personal decision. What you think looks good, maybe 1, yeah, something like that. So 1.2, 1.3 is usually what I do, 1.25, around that. And then extend beyond ticks just goes the other way, so it's extending the extension line. This is our dimension line, the one that sits under the text. And then the extension line is the one that comes away from your object that you're measuring. So, yeah, so that's it. Dimension lines exactly are these ones, and then extension lines have the settings down here, or all of this. So I'll make that the same, 1.25, but just so you can see the difference, I'll make it 3 just so that you can see it come out, but I'll bring it back to 1.25 so they're equal. I just like them to look that way. That's it, all done. But again, for some reason, some people really struggle with this. I think just because they don't understand what all the settings mean. But pretty easy once you know.
So if we're using our template,
Yes.
it will save it all?
That's right, done for good. Yeah, that's right. But because you made those files earlier, the earlier exercises, you will have to go back to those and do it each time. Yeah. So it's good to practice it a couple of times, but then, yeah, once you've got it, do it in your template and never have to do it again, and that's good. So I've got my dimension style, it's set current. If you see there that it's not the current style, you can click set current, close, and because this is not a very complicated file, I'm not even going to worry about making a new layer just for my dimensions. I'm happy to use that annotation layer for all of the annotation, and I'm just going to have a go at drawing some dimensions. So, you'll see there are a few new options for dimensions that I'm not a big fan of, especially this one. That dimension tool, it's good when it works, but basically it decides what sort of dimensioning you get to do. So there you can do pretty much all the different types of dimensions. Notice there it's just down the line. But what if I want to control it a bit more and control where it's measuring? It's a bit harder. So I'm not a huge fan of that. This stuff I can do easily anyway. So I don't really need it to tell me how it wants to do it. I want to decide. So that one, because it's basically automatic, I don't really use it very much. Some people like it, but I don't really. So next to it, you've got the old dimension tools, which still work really well. And you've really just got 2 main options. You've got linear and aligned. So linear is actually the one you want to use the most. When we go to Revit, you'll see that it's the other way around. It's aligned that you'll use for everything, just because of how it's set up. But with AutoCAD, linear should be the one that you go to the most. So I'll choose linear and show you how it works. If you click on a point, of course, it'll measure from there. And I'm just going to come up to the corner that's above that, click, bring it out, and then place my dimension. So that's worked pretty well, but there's no gap between my dimension, my extension line and the wall, which isn't very neat. So I'll come back to my dimension style, click modify, and just show you one other setting. You've got offset from origin. So I'm going to make that 5. Well, in fact, no, I'll make it 10, because we've got room. Click OK, close, and it's put that gap in automatically. Not really. Yeah, no, it's more of a judgment thing. Just what fits well, really. Yeah. No, I mean 10's probably a good starting point, though. Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah. So if I come back and I'll show you, I'll draw some more dimensions and I'll show you one other setting. So I'll just draw some more linear dimensions. And then notice if I go from the corner on the outside and then to the corner on the inside, that's a diagonal measurement. But this is why linear is so good, because it doesn't give you diagonals, it just gives you vertical or horizontal, depending on where you move the cursor. And that's really good, because you don't want diagonal measurements in a situation like this. You want the vertical or horizontal if you're going the other way. That's normally how you dimension architecturally. You give horizontal and vertical dimensions, and that can then be used to work out the diagonal distance if you need it. So that's good. But now there's a problem, because that's not so neat. You can manually tidy it up. You can always use the grips to stretch it, and that would fix it. And I'll show you one other little option that I like a lot. Back into the dimension style. Modify again, and then you've got this other option. So offset that I used first, that measures 10. The distance is 10 times 50 because of our scale, so it's 500, right, from here to there. So measuring from the dimension line. But if we tick this one, I'm going back to front, sorry, being stupid. So it's actually 10 from the wall to where it starts. Sorry. So now if I tick this one, that's measuring the other way. So I'll make it 10 as well. Or maybe just so it's different, I'll make it 15 just so you can see it's a different number. So that is going to measure from the dimension line this way. So what does that mean in practice? Didn't do it. Okay, let's fix that. Good put in. No, it should have. Didn't said that easy. Should be. Yeah, 10, 15, that's right. Okay, I just made it a bit long. Okay, so I'll come back and I'll make it 5, just so you can see it should work now. There we go. Okay, so they work together. One's measuring from one side, the other one's measuring the other side. So because I didn't have them long enough, it was using the offset. And I'll just prove that to you. So if I bring it closer, it's going to go eventually to a point where the offset is overriding this one. But it's good to have them both, so that way you can get most of your dimensions to be nice and neat and even. So, I'm going to go and draw a new linear one. So again, I'll do the same thing, going from the whichever corner, the inside to the outside is fine, and then coming across to the left, you can see I get to a point where they're going to be even. You see how it's working? So that's the offset, and I don't really want that. I want to come further, so it's going to use that extension line distance, and you can line them up exactly. So yeah, it's good to be neat with these things. And then one more, again, just using the inside corners of the wall. And then as you're placing this dimension line, you can snap to something else if you want to line up. And so then there's one last setting I want to show you, and that's how to get these little dimensions to be a bit neater or clearer, because that's gone to the side, and now that I've got a line, it's not very clear, and if I go to adjust it, it's going to misbehave. So now finally coming back to the dimension style, and you can see here it's fine to come and change settings after you've made the style and drawn some things. So it's on the fit tab. We want over dimension line with leader. So that's it. And click OK, close, and that way I can now adjust the position of that text, and it should take the leader with it, and it doesn't try and move the... so that's the line that goes from the text to the thing it's measuring. So this line here, that's the leader. Yeah, sure. So you can move it around here, it'll take the leader away, but that's still pretty clear. Otherwise, around here, I'll show you there's some other ways you can get the leaders to work, but yeah, that's it. But the main thing is getting that dimension style set up first, and then you sometimes will have to go and fiddle with the text placement and things like that. But yes, I'm only going to show you linear for now, so use linear for all your dimensions. And think about the way you're measuring things. So the way that I'm doing it with an overall dimension and then the internals, as you can see there, is a good basic practice. Right, so putting the whole running dimension for the internals. Has Jeanette, have you got Jeanette for any of your classes? Jeanette? Yeah, so she'd be good at explaining this for hand drawing. Running dimensions, having that as a good way of checking to see that everything adds up to the overall dimensions. I know she always talks about that, and that's a common drawing principle. And yeah, I'll bore you some more with dimensions later, but as long as you can get these set up and you can see them on the screen, then when you go to your layouts on your page, you should see them at the right size. So start to have a look at the layout tabs, and you're going to see all of the things you've drawn at their print size. We'll come back to the layouts and go through the setup for that afterwards, but that should be enough to get you going with dimensions.